A quick note about sock sewing. When you sew a sock, it's called darning. Now, this is not historically accurate, but the reason why it's called darning is because if you sew a hole in a sock in the place where you usually get them on the bottom, every time you step down, there's going to be a little notch. It's going to be a knot, basically. After you sew this up, there's going to be a knot, and every time you step on it, it's going to hurt a darn lot. That's why it's called darning, to me. But if you have, I recommend just leaving the sock. If the hole's on the bottom, just live with it or throw the sock away. Sorry, changing of the weather. But if it's on the top, the basic sewing method that I'm about to show you will work just as well for the top of a sock as it will for anything else. All right, this next sewing method will work for just about anything that has holes, anything that has a tear. The thinner your fabric, the bigger you're going to want to make the knot at the end of your thread, because if it's like a piece of silk or just a thin material, if it's just a single little knot at the end, it's going to just pull right through. So make it big enough depending on how thin your fabric is. Now, when you're dealing with a hole in a piece of fabric, specifically a piece of clothing, towels, it's not going to make too much of a difference which way you do this to, usually. Unless one side has a pattern and the other side doesn't. But you're always going to want to go inside out. So like this is a sleeve. If you get a hole in the underarm or in the main part of the shirt, you're just going to have to turn the whole shirt inside out. But with sleeves, you just can roll them over a little bit. But you're going to want to do the inside. That way it doesn't matter how messy your seams are. You're just going to have it. Now what you're going to do is you're going to fold it. So whichever way so as you can see, this has some stripes texture kind of going. You want to go with the design. So I'm going to fold it this way, and you're going to end up with all the fuzzy stuff. Like I said, this is inside out. So you're going to end up with all the fuzzy stuff and the seams on the inside, which will make the outside look put together like there's not a hole there. Already threaded our needle because it's the same method. And it doesn't matter which end you start with. I tend to like to start at the bottom, wherever I declare the bottom to be. And you want to go a little bit outside of where the hole actually starts, because otherwise where the thread has come thin, it can continue the hole in a different spot. So I like to go a little bit outside of that, and I pushed it through and then loop it around. What this is going to do, there's multiple methods. You can pull through like this. I like doing this for clothes because it makes a circle around the piece. Make sure that you're not sewing onto this. Make sure you're just sewing the part with the hole. The folding helps with that, by the way. And when you're doing this, make sure that you go below where the hole is, because otherwise you're just gonna have a rib cage of string in the middle of a hole. So go a little bit below that. That way you're actually sewing what you need to get sewn and the fabric won't fall apart. You can just move the needle in and then back through the other side, but that's just not as secure for me, especially since this is a shirt that tends to get a lot of holes in it because it's older. So stuff that's more delicate, that's more prone to tearing like that, I prefer the circle method. And like I said, once you start doing it, you just keep pushing it through. You can use a thimble, which is the little metal bucket that goes onto your finger. But for the most part, you're going to be okay. Like I said, you're just pulling this through, looping around, pulling it through, looping around. Now you're going to want to take your time with this and get the loops pretty close together. It's going to take more time doing that, because if you try to make giant loops, it's not going to look as good. You want this to look seamless on the outside, the part that people are going to see. So you just keep going through, and you're just making these centimeters apart as you sew. And it doesn't, you can do this while you're watching stuff. Like once you get a rhythm going and you hold it in the same place, you won't really have to think about this. And just like at the bottom, you want to go a little bit beyond where the hole ends or starts. That way, that part of the thread won't come loose. When you get to a seam or a folded part on your fabric, it's going to be a little bit thicker, so you're going to need a little push for your needle. Don't force the needle, just give it a push from the back like this rather than from the middle like this. That's how you poke yourself and end up bending your needle. And once you bend the needle, you just kind of got to get a new needle. Now luckily they come in packs of a bajillion of different sizes. So lucky for you, there are some of them that have really big eye holes. So if you need help seeing with that, it's just fine. Once you get to that end, same methodology of finding a loop and then tying it. And if you're not satisfied with it, bind it again, make your tie. Like I said, I'm gonna do this about 3 times is my usual. Then hold it in place, cut it kinda loose. And then on the outside, it's harder to tell that anything was sewn there, especially at a distance. You just no longer have a hole. Do note that if the same area keeps tearing over and over, you can really only get a good seamless sew about 2 or 3 times, depending on how thick your fabric is. There's going to be a point in time where the hole's just going to be so big that you just need to, the shirt's done or the boxers are done, whatever it is that you're sewing. Or you can sew it and continue on with your life. And I will see you for the next in this series and for Makeup Monday and any vlogs. And you can follow me at Twitter. Show me your sewing creations. If it's your first time sewing, if it seems a little bunched up, you can get yourself a seam ripper and pull it out. And I will show you that another time. Bye-bye.